My name is Daniel Petros. I am 62 years old and have been an Orthodox priest for almost 4 decades. I was born in a small village in northern Greece, but for 30 years I have served the Orthodox community in Chicago, in the Greektown neighborhood. Over the years I have seen generations get married, be born and leave before the altar that I now look at with different eyes. It was Easter Sunday. The church was packed, as always at that time of year. The scent of incense filled every corner of the temple, and chants echoed through the stained glass windows as if angels were whispering to us. But something was different that day. From the moment I opened my eyes in the morning, I felt a tightness in my chest, as if time was about to break. All last week I had been having strange dreams, dreams of fire, darkness, and eyes that watched me without blinking. I had usually dismissed these visions as fatigue or a reflection of my reading. But that Sunday, as I walked toward the pulpit with the Bible in my hands, I felt as if a presence were following me, invisible and heavy. I began my sermon as usual, speaking about Christ's sacrifice and the promise of resurrection, but my words came out more slowly, as if they were being pulled by something inside me. I looked around at the congregation, familiar faces, entire families who looked to me for their spiritual guide. And then I felt it, a violent tightening in my chest. The sound of my heart grew louder, as if it were echoing off the stained glass windows. My legs gave out. The Bible slipped from my hands. Everything went silent. In that moment, before everything went dark, I knew something beyond human comprehension was about to happen. If you feel there's something bigger behind this story, stay with me. This is just the beginning. And if this touches you in any way, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps me share what I've seen and what I've been called to reveal. Everything went silent and at the same time deafening. I fell before the altar like a dead weight, and only learned later from the trembling words of my parishioners that the impact echoed like thunder among the columns of the church. Some thought I had tripped, others thought it was part of an Easter drama. But when my head hit the marble floor and the Bible fell open to the page of Revelation, the murmur turned to panic. A few people screamed. A woman ran up to me crying. It was the daughter of an old friend whom I had baptized as a child. She trembled as she touched my face, trying to find warmth where there was none. My body was cold. My lips were purple. My eyes fixed on the ceiling, unblinking. It took only 6 minutes for the ambulance to arrive, but to everyone there it felt like an eternity. On the way to the hospital, my mind was no longer there. And yet, I remember everything. The doctors said my heart had stopped for exactly 11 minutes, technically dead. They used the defibrillator 3 times, and on the 3rd they almost gave up, but something made them try a 4th. One last push, as if a silent voice said, "Not yet." Meanwhile, I was somewhere else. I remember seeing myself lying on the stretcher, the paramedics shouting my name, but I saw them from above, as if hovering over my body. I floated lightly, without pain, without fear. The city passed quickly beneath the moving ambulance, but for me, everything was still, suspended between worlds. I looked around, expecting to see only darkness, but then something happened. The ceiling of the ambulance dissolved into light. Not ordinary light. It was alive. It pulsed like a heart. And from that light I felt a calling. Not in words, but in feeling. It was like an embrace that penetrated every part of my soul. And then I was pulled in, pulled by something invisible, irresistible, that took me further and further away from the world I knew. In the background I began to hear sounds, voices, singing, but also screams. I was going to a place where no human words can describe. The emergency room was tense. The clock on the wall read 9:47 a.m. when the heart monitor emitted a steady, flat line. The sound, that constant beeping, was like a cold sentence. I, Daniel Petros, 62 years old, priest, mentor, son and servant, had been pronounced dead. The medical team fought with everything they had. Injections, defibrillator, chest compressions, but my heart did not respond. The chief physician, a man who had seen hundreds of deaths in his career, shook his head and said, "Time of death, 9:58 a.m. It was at that moment, and I remember it clearly, that the physical world was left behind. Everything around me disappeared. The hospital walls, the voices, the machines, everything dissolved like smoke. And then I was swallowed by a tunnel. But it wasn't dark like they always describe. It was a tunnel of silence, of suspension. Time and space no longer made sense. I neither walked nor flew. I just got carried away. At the end of that tunnel, a presence awaited me. Even before I saw him, I felt him. It was as if all the love in the universe had been concentrated in one place. But there was also fear, a reverent fear, like that of a child before something infinitely greater. And then I saw it. He was standing at a distance, but his presence went through me like fire. He had deep eyes which seemed to contain all the pain and all the mercy of humanity. It was Jesus, but he didn't smile. He looked at me with a pain I will never forget. "Daniel," he said without moving his lips, but his voice rang within me like a quiet thunder. "You have led many to me, but there is something that needs to be said, something the world needs to hear before it is too late." My legs gave out, or so it felt. I knelt down, crying, and in that moment I realized it wasn't just my soul that was before him. It was my entire life. Every word spoken, every gesture, every omission. It was all there, floating around us like fragments of memory. I saw the good I did, but also what I failed to do. I saw the faces of people I helped, but also the faces of those I ignored, and it hurt. It hurt more than any earthly punishment could cause. "You will have a choice, Daniel," he said, "but first, you will see what is coming." Standing before him was like looking into a mirror of the soul, a mirror that cannot be broken or ignored. Jesus did not speak in a tone of condemnation. There was compassion, but also a painful urgency in his presence, like a father who loves too much to be silent. Then he reached out his hand, and when he touched my chest, everything changed. I was thrown out of that place of light, not violently, but with purpose, as if I was being thrown on a journey that I needed to see through to the end. And what I saw, it scarred me forever. I was taken to a city. It was familiar, but at the same time, devastated. Entire buildings were covered in smoke. Sirens echoed in the distance. People ran through the streets with fear in their eyes, but what shocked me most was the spiritual silence. There were no prayers. There was no faith. It was as if God had been erased from the human heart. "This is the future of a world that forgets me," his voice said, echoing within me. Then I was taken to another place, an empty church, dusty benches, an altar without light. But the strangest thing was that I could hear the thoughts of those who used to frequent it. "God doesn't listen to me anymore. Faith solves nothing. I am alone." And then a third place, a room full of screens, people connected all the time, caught up in opinions, in ideologies, but completely disconnected from any sense of eternity. It was a world full of noise and completely deaf to God's call. I cried, I screamed. I prayed that it was just a nightmare, but the vision wouldn't stop. Then one last image, an open field, thousands of white crosses stuck in the ground. But instead of names, there were words written: pride, indifference, and convenient and lukewarm. It was the graveyard of lukewarm souls, those who knew the truth but chose to live as if it were just a distant theory. It was at that moment that I heard the voice of Jesus again. "Daniel, you need to go back. There is something only you can say. They won't listen to prophets, they won't listen to scholars, but maybe they will listen to a man who was dead and came back." I was enveloped by an intense force. A whirlwind of light pulled me in at an absurd speed. My consciousness tightened, as if it were being compressed inside a body again. I felt pain, cold, then heat, and then a sigh. My eyes opened. I was back. The first sound I heard was a scream, high-pitched, desperate, and then voices overlapping, footsteps running, equipment being knocked to the floor. I blinked, slowly, as if each blink needed to relearn how to exist. White lights invaded my eyes. I was back in the hospital. The heart monitor, which had been a straight line of death, now beat like a drum, strong, steady, incredulous. The nurse fell to her knees beside me. The doctor, pale, took a step back, his eyes wide. Neither of them could say a word, and neither could I. I tried to sit up, but my body wouldn't respond. I felt as if I were trapped between two worlds. My arms were shaking, my mouth was dry. But what tormented me most was the weight, an invisible weight on my shoulders, as if an eternity were being compressed into human time. I was kept under observation for 48 hours. Doctors came in and out of the room with questions they didn't even know how to ask. "How is that possible?" they whispered. "He was dead." I listened to them, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. The images I had seen were still burned into my mind, and then came the silence. I went home without giving interviews, without talking to anyone. I just locked myself in my little room with a cross in my hands and tears in my eyes. The nights became long. I woke up screaming. I saw the faces of lost souls. I heard Jesus whispering again and again, "You must tell." But how? How do you tell the world something it doesn't want to hear? For days I prayed. I asked for wisdom. I asked for strength. And in the midst of this silent struggle, a soft voice spoke within me. "Speak, Daniel. Even if only one person hears, it will be enough." That's when I knew what I needed to do. If you've ever felt like there's something beyond this life, something we sometimes try to ignore, tell me, do you believe it's possible to die and come back with a mission? Leave your comment. I want to know who's listening to this with an open heart. Coming back to life wasn't a miracle. It was a burden. Waking up every day with my heart pounding, after having heard the silence of eternity itself, was like carrying an invisible wound. While everyone celebrated my resurrection, an emptiness grew inside me. It wasn't fear of death. It was fear of what I saw, from what I was shown, and above all, fear of failing in the mission that was entrusted to me. In the first few days, I couldn't say a single word about what I had experienced, not to the doctors, not to my family, not to the church members who were waiting for me with flowers, prayers, and hope. I just smiled mechanically, nodded, and took refuge in my room, where I would sit for hours, staring at the wall, with my eyes lost in the afterlife. I tried to get back into my routine. I walked to the chapel, I read passages from the Bible, but every time I walked through the church doors, I felt a chill. It wasn't rejection, it was reverence. It was the knowledge that I had stepped where few had stepped, and returned. How could I preach again, knowing that many of those listening to me were losing their souls while believing they were saved? One night I had a panic attack. It was as if all the images came back at once. The crosses, the faithless faces, the empty church, the voice of Jesus, the unfinished message. I fell to my knees and screamed. I screamed like I had never screamed in my entire priestly life. It was at that moment, alone in the dark, that I understood. Silence was also a sin. What I saw wasn't just for me. It was meant to be told. Even if they mocked me, even if they doubted me, even if they called me crazy, because the pain of keeping it to myself was greater than the fear of human judgment. The next morning I sat down at my computer. I recorded my face for the first time since I had returned. The look in my eyes was different, older perhaps, heavier, but real. I pressed record, and with a shaky voice said simply, "My name is Daniel Petros. I have been an Orthodox priest for 40 years, and I died." Silence. I took a deep breath and continued. "But I came back with something I need to say." The camera blinked. The red light came on, and with it my heart raced. For 40 years I stood in pulpits, comforted families, led baptisms and funerals, but I never felt so exposed as I did in that moment. There was no altar, there was no choir, there was no liturgy to hide my voice. There was only the truth, raw, vivid, urgent. I spoke slowly, like someone walking through a minefield. I was dead for 11 minutes, and in that time I was taken before Jesus. He showed me what was coming and gave me a mission. I told them all I had seen, the city devastated by God's absence, the hardened hearts, the empty churches, the spiritual tombs. I told them about the look in Jesus' eyes that burned like fire, but hurt like a father looking at a lost child. I told them about the choice he had given me, his command, "Go back and speak." As the words came out, I felt my body shiver. It was as if part of my soul was still attached to what I saw, as if by telling the story, I was reliving every second of that journey. But I also felt something else, relief, like a stone was being lifted off my chest. The video was posted without any pretense, no catchy title, no production, just my face, my voice, my truth. That night I slept with a heavy heart, certain that few would see it, that many would laugh, that it would be ignored as just another NDE story among so many. But I was wrong. The next morning I woke up to dozens of messages. By noon, there were hundreds. By nightfall, there were thousands. In less than 24 hours, the video had already surpassed 2 million views. People weren't just watching, they were crying, commenting, sharing. Pastors, psychologists, skeptics, journalists. Everyone wanted to know, What if it's true? What if he really saw something no one else saw? What if this warning is for me? My inbox exploded. Interview invitations, conference calls, endless questions. But among all the comments, one resonated deeply with me. It was from a young woman named Sarah. Father Daniel, I was going to take my life tonight. But after hearing your story, I decided to live. Because now I know there is something after this, and I want to find him. I read that message with tears in my eyes, and I finally understood why I came back. I had never sought fame. I had never craved the spotlight. My ministry had always been a quiet one, focused on caring for the souls of my community, baptisms, confessions, prayers. But suddenly, my life had become an unwitting beacon in the midst of a global spiritual storm. Within 3 days, the video had already surpassed 5 million views. In 7, it exceeded 10. National news channels began reporting, Orthodox priest dies for 11 minutes, returns with message from Jesus. Talk shows, podcasts, even secular outlets wanted to know more. Not about me, but about what I had seen. And it didn't stop there. I began receiving messages in different languages: Spanish, Russian, Arabic, Japanese. People on the other side of the world could relate to my experience. Some said they had been through something similar. Others cried because they felt for the first time that God was still trying to speak to them. A missionary in Nigeria wrote, "I showed your video to an entire village. They fell to their knees and began to pray. But not everyone reacted with faith. Skeptics mobilized. Hallucination, post-traumatic stress disorder, delirium induced by clinical death. I watched entire videos dedicated to discrediting me. Offensive comments, accusations of charlatanism. Some called me an opportunist, others a heretic. Did that shake me? Yes, but just for a moment, because deep down I already knew this would happen. Jesus told me, they won't listen to prophets, they won't listen to scholars, but maybe they'll listen to a man who was dead and came back. That was the hope, the possibility that even amid the cries of the modern world, an ancient truth could still echo in the human heart. I received a letter from a rabbi in Jerusalem. He didn't ask me if I had really seen Jesus. Instead, he wrote, "Something in your voice touched me, and if the Eternal One is still trying to reach us, we need to listen." This is the power of truth. It is not aggressive, it does not impose, but it penetrates, it crosses cultures, barriers, languages, because it does not come from me, it comes from him. I started recording more videos, not to gain followers, but to answer the questions that now came in their thousands. What exactly did he tell you? How can I believe again? How do I reconnect with God? And most of all, is there still time? It was after the 12th video that things changed. Up until then, what I had received was mostly admiration, emotion, and sincere doubts. But something changed when I began to speak more clearly about what I had seen in the visions, about the spiritual state of the world, about judgment, about the coldness of modern faith. The words came out of me with fear and respect, but with firmness. And that was when the harshest reaction came. I received an email from a former church official I had worked with for decades. "You need to stop. You are confusing people. You are crossing the line." That hurt me more than any online criticism. A brother in the faith, a fellow traveler, now saw me as a threat. Soon after, I was officially removed from the parish where I had served for over 30 years. They said it was for my own good, that I needed to recover. But we knew the truth. They were uncomfortable with what I was saying, and mainly with the repercussions it caused. Some friends drifted away. People who once honored me now crossed the street to avoid a simple hello. I received anonymous threats. "Charlatan. Liar. You'll pay for this." I spent sleepless nights in prayer, wrestling with a doubt that began to whisper, what if all this isn't worth it? But then, something happened. I was visited by a young man. His name was Michael. He was 19 years old, with dark eyes and a choked voice. He came into the small room where I was sheltered, sat down across from me and said, "Father, I was lost, drowning in drugs, ready to kill myself. But something in your eyes, in that video, made me stop. I saw you. I saw God there, and I decided to go back. We cried together, we prayed, and in that moment I understood something that gave me back my breath. Every soul that returns is worth more than 1,000 criticisms. Every heart touched weighs more than any title lost. I was not called to please. I was called to warn. Jesus showed me what will happen if we continue to ignore the sacred. He didn't give me back my life so I could keep it in a dark room. He gave me back my life so I could speak, even if my voice trembles, even if I walk alone, because the truth has a price and I'm willing to pay it. There was something inside me that said, time was running out. The days seemed to fly by. The hours felt urgent. Every word I wrote, every video I recorded, felt less like a report and more like a warning. And even with all the tiredness, with my body growing weaker and weaker, I felt there was still something to say. Something that Jesus had placed in my heart and that I had not yet had the courage to say in full. It was on a cold November morning that I decided to write the letter. It was not a testament, nor a manifesto. It was a cry, a confession, a spiritual summons. I sat at the table with a blank sheet of paper and a lit candle. The words flowed as if they were not coming from me, but from him. And one phrase repeated itself at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. Wake up before it's too late. I wrote about what I saw, with more details than I have already revealed on video. The images of the future, the trial, the tears in the eyes of Christ. The voice that told me, faith will become a performance if you do not return to your heart. And there, in that letter, I wrote what few would dare to say, that many of those who call themselves Christians have already forgotten Christ. The following Sunday, against all the diocese's instructions, I went up to the pulpit of the old church for the last time. The community filled the temple. Some knew it was a farewell, others don't. I died, and I saw what awaits the world if we continue to choose pride over humility, distraction over prayer, indifference over repentance. My voice was steady, but my eyes were watery. I spoke for 45 minutes. No one moved. Not a child cried. It was as if time had stopped. At the end, I simply said, the message is written, and when I am gone, may it find ready hearts. The next morning, I was no longer there. My bed was untouched, my clothes were folded. The only thing left was the letter, sealed with a crucifix on top. The police were called. Cameras were searched. No sign, no trail, no explanation. Gone. As if I had been taken by the one who brought me back. And the letter, it would be opened soon. And with it, the final revelation. The news of my disappearance spread faster than I could have imagined possible. Priest who died and came back, mysteriously vanishes after sermon. Headlines, morning shows, prayer groups, skeptical forums. The commotion crossed the boundaries of faith. Even those who had never believed were wondering, is it? But what really caused the shock wasn't my disappearance. It was what I left behind on paper. It was handed over to church authorities, but someone, no one knows who, scanned it and shared it on social media. Within hours, the document was being read, translated and discussed in dozens of languages. There was no secret, just truth. And that perhaps was the most shocking part. This is not a prophecy in the classical sense, read the front page. I was not given a date, an event, a timed punishment. What I was shown was a choice. Humanity is facing a point of no return, and there is still time, but time is growing short. The letter detailed what I saw, in simple yet penetrating words. He spoke about how faith has been diluted until it becomes unrecognizable, how churches have become stages and preachers have become celebrities, how prayer has been replaced by distraction, how the spirit has been replaced by spectacle. But there was also hope. I saw people kneeling in their rooms in silence. I saw homes being rebuilt. I saw children praying again. I saw pastors weeping in repentance. I saw a quiet, humble, but profound revival. And I knew everything can still change. At the end of the letter, a clear warning. If you are reading this, know this. The message is not for others. It is for you. Repent, turn, cry out for mercy. Live as if you have seen what comes next, because I have, and it is real. The effects were immediate. Masses and services were packed like never before, but not out of curiosity, out of thirst, out of fear, out of reunion. Thousands of videos began to appear on social media with the hashtag Message from Daniel. Young people reporting reconciliations with their parents, marriages saved, people giving up addictions, churches opening their doors day and night to those who just wanted to pray. There were also those who scoffed, who said, "It's just another letter." But the strange thing was that even they couldn't stop talking about it, as if something deep down was poking at the souls of even the most skeptical. The letter had been written to everyone, But there was something else, a final line, a loose phrase, one last clue. On the third day, something will happen. The last sentence of the letter echoed like a riddle. On the third day, something will happen. No one knew what to expect. Some said it would be a miracle, others, a final revelation. Many thought it was just a symbol, an allusion to the resurrection of Christ, but the truth is that the whole world was paying attention. Day 3 fell on a grey Wednesday in Chicago. The city, still immersed in the mystery of my disappearance, woke up with an unusual atmosphere. Something was in the air, a restlessness that could not be explained with words. Early in the morning, the reports began. People from different parts of the city, and interestingly the world, reported having had the same dream that night. A golden field, an intense light, and a figure in white, walking among the people, touching their shoulders, always silent, but they all reported the same look, peace and urgency at the same time. Some said they heard the voice, "Return to your first love." Social media has exploded. Hashtags like Da Oter Sirodia and Padre Daniel began trending in several countries. Churches spontaneously opened their doors. Thousands of people who had previously scoffed began searching for the videos, the letter, the full story. Something was moving them, even if they didn't understand exactly what. It was on that same day that a live broadcast mysteriously appeared on the channel I was using, the black screen. Just a blank sentence, "He's coming, get ready." There was no sound, there was no picture, just silence. The video was up for exactly 3 minutes before disappearing. It was shared millions of times within hours, and in that silence, more people prayed than at any loud sermon. It was as if God had made his presence known, not with thunder, but with a whisper that no one could ignore. That night, the church where I had served for 30 years was packed. People knelt on the floor crying, not for me, but for something much greater, for a reunion with the one who had always been there but whom many had forgotten. And it was in this scenario that for the last time someone claimed to have seen him. She was an 87-year-old widow who lived near the old monastery. She said she had seen a figure sitting on a wooden bench at sunset. White hair, hands folded, staring up at the sky. She swore it was me. But when she went to find him, there was no one else there. Just an open Bible into the chapter of Revelation. This story ends as it began, with a mystery, but not with doubts. Because what matters is not where I am, it's what I left behind. The message. There is nothing more to say. Just get ready. Eternity is closer than you think. If you've come this far, it's because this story touched you in some way. And if she touched you, don't let it die now. Subscribe to the channel, not only to follow new stories, but to walk with us on this journey of awakening. If this message spoke to your heart, comment below. I heard the call. This shows that you are with us, that there are still people awake in this sleeping world. Leave a like now, not for me, but so that this message reaches more lives. If something in you still beats, the next video is already on the screen. Go there. Continues, because what comes next might mess with you even more.